welcome once again to the Tyrant-Den. I just warmed up by getting a reaction out of new Ryan George video, but guess what? It wasn't a good reaction. The real mean judge was me. I didn't approve of my work. It was meh at best, and I said some very offensive things. And not, whoa, what did he say offensive? More of a, offensive. You know, not the stuff you really get engagement out of. So anyway, reacting to how to beat the demonic angels in Berserk Golden Age arc. Okay, good. I want to make sure that wasn't
Bush guide, cold and smooth.
Get it out of my face.
Stop. Leaves a 3.
No one cares about you, Bush guy. Alright. Here's the deal with Berserk. Berserk was one of the classic hardcore, terrifying, horrifying, mentally scarring animes back in the day. It was basically The Witcher, but for anime, and more so. Because anime. I think it started running in like the early 90s up to recently when the writer died, so we'll never actually know how it ends. There's some horrifying, truly horrifying stuff that happens, and the enemies are basically omnipotent, and have, canonically, never been defeated because the writer died. So, in How to Beat Anime, the show where they talk about anime with seemingly impossible situations and how the people could have survived, let's see if they can actually come up with something that might work here in the horrifying, scarring prologue of Berserk.
If you had to stop a horrifying apocalypse from taking over the world, what would you do? You'll have to face fallen angels and terrifying monsters and demons, and you'll have to fight against the only friend you've ever had to save the world. I'm going to break down the mistakes made. What you should...
Now, spoiler alert, you're probably not going to hear out here because this all takes place after the Golden Arc, but this is anime. So as you can probably guess, the answer to how do you defeat the only friend you ever had who turned evil is make more friends.
Do and how to beat the world of Berserk. This guy's soon going to be literally forced to watch all of his close friends get ripped, torn, crushed by terrifying demons. Guts here is a lone wolf mercenary.
Oh, incidentally, I should apologize about the horrible CG of this all. You know, the original art in the manga is some of the best there is. The original anime, which wasn't CGI from the 90s, I mean, it was rough, but it was like a beautiful rough. Like, they didn't really have a budget, but they were trying so hard, you know? And this is this. This is like, the best thing about the CG in this series is how silly the boobs look when they take the nipples off to censor them.
For hire, and the fiercest warrior in the world,
very silly.
Or at least in his mind he is, and he's taking part in a bloodthirsty war.
Quick backstory, this is the man who was born out of his mother's corpse as she was hung from a tree, and then his life just got worse.
Sieging the enemy's castle, they break through their defenses and begin to kill off every guy here. Coming across this giant warrior defending the castle, the army he's a part of refuses to fight this psycho killer, and Guts gets tired of waiting and challenges him to a one-on-one battle to the death. If I was Guts, I would know that the only way to take this man down would be to go right through his sweat-drenched balls. Let me explain. Bazuso here is known as the 30-man slayer and overall badass. But if we notice, when our army entered the castle,
which I'm sure he sold better in the original
all of our
artwork.
Men at bay just by trash-talking them like The Rock would at WrestleMania. Impressive, but a problem. This guy was using his mythical status to instill fear in our troops. We cannot let that happen, no matter how impressive it is that he is vastly outnumbered by our troops. And this means that he is smarter than he looks and is carrying a battle axe, which means that if he doesn't cut through our armor, he could very well crush our bones anyways. So that means we have to be super careful, and we can't rush him. Because of this reason, there are two tactics that
I know a lot of people, myself included, would make fun.
And one being way less risky,
good image here.
And the other plan involves
good
getting
shot.
up real close and personal with his balls. And his sheer size.
There we go. The instinct is going to be to make fun of how long Guts' sword is, but here it's actually reasonable. He doesn't have the Dragon Slayer yet. What you should make fun of is how huge that battle axe is. Look up some historical battle axes. They were not. They were long, short. They don't get big like that. They just don't.
Size alone, on top of the weight
That's
of
an
the
anvil.
armor and the weapon that he carries, means that he's probably way slower than us. And so, taking all of this into account, I would stay just out of reach of his first several swings, because this will tire him out. And the first sign that I see that he's starting to slip, I'm gonna head behind him while staying low and take advantage of his shit vision, and then use the opening under his legs, which is very common in armor, in order for maneuverability. I would simply take my sword and chop apart his manhood right here, as this alone would cripple the man forever.
You're not gonna get to his manhood. The manhood is like the best defended part there, but you can hamstring him.
And from there, we could take him as a prisoner or brutally kill him, or we could just leave him there to bleed out, because he will be in too much pain to defend himself at all.
Yeah, from what I understand from lots of historical YouTube channels I watch, the typical thing would be to trying to get the hamstring in there, then when he goes down on his knees, you just flip the visor up and then, hand in half, sword him right in the eyes.
Drawing his sword, he launches at the enemy with powerful moves no one has ever seen, and he quickly slices through the
Powerful
stomach.
moves no one has ever seen, like overhand, overhead, overhead. Spam,
and
spam,
splits
spam.
his head in two. The army cheers and goes on to win the rest of the battle, with him not realizing that he's been watched by this man and his team. A man that will change the course of history. After the battle, Guts takes his pay and quickly leaves for his next adventure. But that's when a group of bandits start charging towards him. On alert, he takes out his sword and defends his salary. The men attack
And is
him, but he
immediately
quickly
confused because they look exactly like everyone else he's ever worked with or fought.
defends himself and manages to take some of them out, and just then another warrior leaps at him, but he cuts him down and the helmet comes off, and Guts sees that it's a woman. She lunges at him with speed and
Oh,
precision,
I thought
but
it'd be
Guts
one of the
manages
two blonde
to overpower
ones.
her, and he tries to take off her head, but he is stopped by the team's leader. This man's name is Griffith. He tells Guts to lower his sword so they can talk, but Guts doesn't listen and attacks, but the fight
Again, talk about things that look better in the original anime or the manga. That hawk helmet. Dude,
is
it's
already
just so
over, and
lame
he
here.
realizes that Griffith has already critically injured him with his lightning-quick moves. A few days later, he wakes up all healed and finds out that he is in a camp belonging to the greatest mercenary group in the land, the Band of the Hawk. Griffith approaches Guts and
The band of the hawk. 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 The band of the hawk.
offers him to work for his group, but Guts doesn't trust him and challenges him to a duel instead. Griffith reluctantly takes out his sword and repeats his insane moves on Guts, but finds out that he is a madman, biting his sword and taking him to the ground. Griffith gets
Oh
dirty and finally
my.
manages to win the duel, and Guts admits defeat and tells him that he'll work for the Band of the Hawks. Griffith smiles and tells him that they will work towards
Guess that's a
achieving
smile.
his dreams of getting their very own kingdom.
I swear, they blew the entire budget trying to make Griffith a little prettier.
But no one here has any idea that obtaining this kingdom will come at the ultimate price. Over the next few years, Guts takes part in many battles with Griffith,
$1 million.
and the group
Now we know
gets
what it
larger
costs.
and larger
They
and
told us
gains
at the
more
beginning.
notoriety and makes an even bigger name for themselves. And one day during their latest battle, they face their toughest opponent yet. The men tell Guts not to go down
Ooh,
this
this-
basement,
this.
because down there is a 200-year-old monster waiting for them inside. But Guts doesn't listen and charges in there like a dog without a brain. Rushing inside, he steps into a pool of blood. and
I just can't
smells
take
the
this
fresh
monster
stench of
seriously.
rotting corpses. And he comes across this giant demon, Nosferatu Zod. Guts
Yeah, that's what we think of when we think of Nosferatu. We think of a generic-looking ogre.
acts without thinking and uses his giant legendary sword against him, and he manages to make a single cut into this monster, and this pisses it off. Suddenly, this demon begins shape-shifting into a huge minotaur beast, attacking Guts.
Our series of actors who's ogre, there's a minotaur. What the
He
heck?
gets injured and realizes that this demon can't be stopped, and just then his men
Only
show
another
up, but
monster.
quickly gets
Why?
slaughtered as well.
Why
And
bother
Griffith
with
then
that?
shows up and tries to save him, and the two take pot shots at the demon. It knocks Griffith out cold, and it's about
Oh, but of course he has to do it sexy because it's
to
Griffith.
skin him alive when it realizes what's exactly around his neck. The egg of the king. This demon is shocked and suddenly stops fighting, and then he begins chuckling and warns Guts that
Hang on, that wasn't a great chuckle. You could do. Yeah, you kind of want to go for that Ted Danson nefarious chuckle that he had in he had in Good Place, but then you add that little thing at the end. You gotta have that. You go grungy at the.
That this man is not his
I take
friend.
Maple Lash
And
very
when
seriously.
this man's ambition
I'm the Tyrant-Den.
collapses, death will come, and no one will be able to escape it. Suddenly growing ginormous wings, the demon
Because why
blasts
not?
out
You already started out as an ogre turned into Minotaur. Why not grow wings too?
of the castle and leaves Guts with more questions than answers. The next day, both men recover, and Guts questions Griffith about the
They
necklace.
did a good job with those
What
trees.
is it?
They did a good job with the trees. You know, the yellow and everything there. You don't have to look that close at it to get the
And
effect.
what does it mean? Griffith's voice tenses up slightly when he responds, and says
He
that he got
come.
it long ago from a fortune teller lady. And he mentions that whoever possesses this
Ooh, not a good angle for our buddy the hawk. Ugh, no. Not at all pretty.
necklace was destined to obtain the world. In exchange for their own flesh and blood, of course. Whatever that means. But then they're interrupted by the king and his entourage.
just
And
not
he
hear
tells
fairy
them
tales
how
in this world?
impressed he is with their team, and Griffith thanks him, and he throws an eye at the king's daughter, and she throws one back at him. Griffith.
Okay, when you're carrying around the egg of the king and it's berserk, you don't know how bad it gets. I don't know for sure whether or not throwing an eye is
You
literal.
naughty boy.
Give it
No one
time.
here has any idea that this mistake will trigger the events of Griffith's demise. That night, Griffith offers Guts a new
Demise or ascension.
terrifying job to commit murder. He tells him that not everyone in this kingdom
Ooh,
likes
I like that look.
including this one guy, who is second in line to the throne.
We
Griffith
know he's evil because he's ugly, and only ugly people are evil, right?
gets serious and says that this man views him as a threat and will likely have him killed soon.
I mean,
and he tells Guts to go kill this man without
there aren't any
question as a
evil,
favor
pretty
to him.
people.
And Guts, like an idiot,
like-
accepts.
All the like Berserk is the ugliest good guy in this series.
Okay.
They'll be here in 5. We ready?
There's a.
Left.
I don't have it. We should have used bear.
Today, let's paint. Right now, get
This ain't the
America's
kind of
most
bear I
trusted
wanna
paint
see
brand
when
at a
we're
new
talking
low
about
price,
Berserk.
starting at $28.98. Bear, only at the Home Depot.
Formulated for all fine hair types.
Yes. Welcome to the
Vitakin's
Tyrant-Den.
acidic
We're
bonding
raw and
concentrate, lightweight
uncut
liquid
here.
conditioner.
Okay, this is why I would have killed my target with a bowl of blueberries. Let me explain. The man Griffith is setting us up to kill the brother to the king, a real psychopath, and us killing any royal family member
What
will
does that have to do with
screw us over
blueberries?
big time. It has to, even if we aren't caught. Because as a mercenary group being paid to fight for the king, that's not exactly an uncommon thing back in the Middle Ages. But the fact is that mercenaries are known to be only loyal to whoever pays them the most, meaning that our reputation is not exactly the greatest. And think about it, this kingdom has 5,000 soldiers that are only here because they want to get paid. They're just commoners, serfs, they have no alliances, and we live right outside the castle. So let's play this out. A royal family member gets murdered the moment we start to get closer to the royal family. Coincidence? I think not. A member of the royal family getting murdered will make our band of the Hawks the first suspect. And this king is
I don't
powerful
follow the logic, but okay. This guy watched the show and I didn't.
enough to kill us all if he can't find the suspect. And when you add to the fact that there are many examples of mercenaries throughout history betraying their clients, this means that it's not out of the world to assume that we would be guilty. Also, the idea of trying to assassinate a royal is way too much work and way too risky. Instead, I would utilize certain poisonous plants like wolfsbane, which is a poisonous plant that grows in Central Europe.
Yeah, anyone who's played CK3 knows you can assassinate someone and not leave anyone certain whether or not it was an assassination. That's how
20
you do it.
milliliters of this bad boy is needed to kill somebody, and death usually occurs within 2 to 6 hours, which is exactly the time frame we need. But the best part about this is that the wolfsbane poison can also act upon contact with skin through open wounds, which means we could smudge some on our target's open wounds the next time we go into battle, or stuff it into his mouth. Since
Alongside
the
him.
poison has a delayed reaction, and the first signs of being poisoned are common tummy troubles, and this means that the king will think that our target has sustained wounds or caught an infection from battle, rather than him being poisoned. Later, he sneaks into
Yeah,
the
no, he's
castle,
got it right
killing
here.
this one guard, and he slithers his way into his target's room, taking him out. He suddenly hears someone approaching through this door. Launching at the intruder, he puts a hole in his second victim,
Oh,
and
yeah.
realizes that he
And he's using his stereotypical giant freaking sword, too.
just
How will they ever
accidentally
figure out who
murdered
actually
a
did
kid.
this?
This man's kid. Guts' eyes widen as he tries to help him, but it's no use. And just then he hears
Why do you
more
send
sounds
Guts
of
to do it
incoming
too?
reinforcements.
I get that Guts is your most loyal guy, but how is Guts the best
He quickly
person for
fights
this
his way
job?
out of the castle, getting shot in the arm with this arrow. He manages to jump over the castle walls and escape. The news spreads quickly across the kingdom, but nobody can focus on it for long. The next day, they resume their 100-year battle with this other powerful kingdom, and they get into another bloody
Seriously, everybody goes on and on about like I haven't actually seen said anime rather some manga. I just merely mean to. Everyone goes on and on how brilliant Griffith is, unless he intended for something to happen here with this. That wasn't
battle.
brilliant.
Griffith's right-hand woman, Casca here, stops to take on this mid-level boss. I'll call him Uglyface, because he's nasty, and he overpowers her and
that's like
corners her at
everyone
the
in
edge
the
of this
series.
cliff. Some of her reinforcements arrive, but they get slaughtered in seconds. And Uglyface makes fun of her and prepares to strike her down, but she is saved by Guts at the last moment. He quickly knocks this guy back, but this pisses him off. Uglyface whips
could've
out
just
a new
let a
move
woman be
and prepares
badass,
to
not
use
in
his
this
ultimate
series.
spear technique passed down through his family for 140 years. But
Spinning
instead,
it.
instantly gets his ass kicked. Guts checks on Casca, but she almost falls off this cliff. He tries to catch her and holds on for dear life, but Uglyface shoots an arrow in him last minute, and the two fall down
And
this
it
giant cliff and come
punctures
crashing down into
fucking Metal
freezing
Cuirass.
cold water. Later, washing up ashore, Guts takes himself and Casca to this cave, stripping off their freezing cold clothes. They try to warm each other up. A few hours later, Casca wakes up warmer than a bento box, but she reveals that she is angry at Guts for being a better man than Griffith ever was to her. Not fully healed yet, Guts and Casca try to make their escape, but run into another ambush and meet the same guy from earlier, Uglyface, and he laughs and tells them that he'll soon torture them with a torture technique passed down through his family for
Does he
200
seriously?
years. His men attack, but
Oy.
Guts and Casca manage to put up a good fight, and Guts tells Casca to go get help. And stubborn as hell, she refuses for a sec, and then finally tells him that she'll be back soon. Guts continues to take on the soldiers.
I can't
deflecting
let
arrows
someone
and taking
else do
swings,
something cool
ruthlessly
in this
killing dozens
series.
of soldiers in
I'm
this bloodbath. It
Guts.
is a mwah. Beautiful. Meanwhile, Casca runs into some more soldiers and they pin her down, trying to fight back, and she is saved just in time by Griffith and his men. And she begs them to go save Guts. Back at Guts' position, he
Hey.
slaughters man after man and decapitates more sons and fathers. The enemies start to get even more terrified as they surround him, and he pulls some serious God of War moves
And what are we
cements
supposed to
his
do?
status as a
Attack
legend
him at
among
more than
men.
2 at a
Moments
time?
later, Griffith's men finally arrive, but they see
That'd just be
hundreds
rude.
of corpses leading up to Guts resting on this tree and hanging on to dear life. They hail him as a hero and give him the name the 100-Man Slayer. Catching up to the leader of the bad guys,
better than
Uglyface,
30.
they head back home.
Not very
Later
original,
that night,
though.
This rando teammate tells Casca Griff considers her and Guts essential to the group, and she finally
Yeah, it's the second one who I assumed was a chick. And I'm just going to assume would have probably been better suited for the assassination job.
gets some much needed validation. He hands her some magic powder to go apply on Guts. Reaching him, he tells her how seeing Griffith
Magic
chase a
powder.
dream was inspiring, and it made him question if he should go find his own dream. And this
Good night.
shocks Casca, and she tells him to focus on the current war at hand. For tomorrow, there will be even more bloodshed. In the morning, another battle takes place, sending animal corpses over the wall. More soldiers clash with swords and spill
nasty.
blood. More and more of the king's men keep dying, and he begins to get worried that they'll never be able to take down this castle. And just then, a squad of lethal black knights exit the castle, with a fighting force more powerful than they could even imagine. Unable to breach the castle, the king retreats for the day, and that night, he gathers
Yeah, you didn't really want to. You don't really want to try and breach the castle. Like, okay, so other things I've learned watching medieval YouTube channels. For as much as we glorify the whole siege towers and climbing up and all that stuff, you see the Uruk-hai trying to do stuff. That's not really. You didn't try to lay siege to a castle. Like, laying siege to a castle is usually more like what the Trade Federation was doing in Phantom Menace. You surround them and basically kind of starve them out. You have a time crunch, then you don't go over. You go under. That's where behold the underminer. That's what undermining comes from. You dig underneath it. You dig underneath them. And set off explosives because and you don't even need self-explosive. Future ones you self-explosive. Early on, you just dig underneath and you cause it to collapse under the structure. So that's how you try to do it. If or you could try to be smart, which we know Griffith isn't, because Griffith sent Guts to do a oversword stabby assassination attempt to have poisons, and that is trying to find a back entrance to a castle, which castles had.
His counselors to give him some much-needed advice. They warn him that most of his
There's a lot of actual stories about some servant just being bribed to leave the back door open.
men
Those
have
are real.
been killed, including their own legion of knights. They can't keep up this fight for much longer. And then Griffith, sitting at the table in
Okay, why are you the ones outside the castle, the ones who can't keep up the siege much longer? You are the ones with supply lines.
careful silence, tells the king that his group of mercenaries will be able to defeat the enemy, all 30,000 men, if the king lets them and gives the order. The king receives Griffith's
It's
confidence.
probably a problem if you have that many more men inside the walls. That's just more mouths to feed.
And accepts his offer. The next day, Griffith's group of
Oh, and if you ever check out anyone who's watching this, who's
If
also seeing,
lets them and
Give it a
gives the
second,
order.
give it a
The
second,
king
give it a
receives
second.
Griffith's confident gaze and
duh,
accepts his offer. The next
yeah. Okay, anyone who's watched Shadiversity, you know what to do here. Just cause some of those rocks to collapse. Just collapse them out, and it's not that hard, actually. It's harder to keep it from collapsing. That is actually not the secure location you'd think it is. That is not. Ooh, that's not good.
day, Griffith
Heck, you can probably just like dig into the mountain and then dig into the city if you didn't want to. If you wanted to keep it, you know, if you want to destroy a little city by collapsing the mountain on, just dig into the mountain and then dig into the city.
This group of 5,000 men prepare for battle. Getting the layout, he is warned of what they're up against. 20 high-tech cannons, an endless sea of incoming arrows, pounds upon pounds of heavy stone catapults, gallons of
Okay,
burning
how are you
oil
gonna
resting
animate
up
this?
above on the
Ooh, that's another one. Oil is valuable. Oil is extremely valuable. So don't boil oil to throw on your enemies when you can instead just heat up sand. Really think about that. Really think about it. Oil. Don't get me wrong. Boiling oil, flaming oil is horrible. But now would you really think about what getting some red hot, not quite molten sand on you would be like when you're wearing armor, porous armor? Really tell me which one you'd rather choose.
castle walls
You don't want
and
either.
legions of the enemy's very own holy purple rhino knights. This is getting way too out of hand for no reason. If I was them, I would have simply offered myself up. Sort of. I would have offered up some of my men in a sort of Trojan horse kind of example. Let me explain. The enemy's castle is situated in front of a mountain that we can see right here, and this means that they only need to defend one area of their castle, which they have been doing brilliantly, unfortunately.
Which is always true of castles. That's your basic castle design. You want a weak point in the castle, namely the door, because then everyone's going to go after the door, because that's objectively easier to try to get through the door than would be to break through the walls. But because of that, it means you only really have to guard the door. This would be true even if the castle was circular. The mountain is a terrible design because you can collapse the mountain, you can tunnel through the mountain. It's not a good design, my
It
dude.
means that we can't sneak up on them or divide their attention by attacking them from numerous sides. However, if I was the king, I would have realized that there was a much easier way to attack this castle, in a way where we would have never even needed the Band of the Hawks, however impressive they are. I would have gone in there by doing what a military group known as the Visigoths did during the destruction of Rome in 410 CE. It's noted that on the battlefield, there are destroyed siege towers left and right over here, and that is something that we can absolutely use. We're going to have this plan start at night.
That's
I'm
what
going
I
to have
was
my
gonna say.
infantry along the outer walls on both sides of this mountain, while I would put all of my archers hidden within these destroyed siege blocks and towers.
Okay.
And then when everybody's ready, I would then offer some of my most handsome soldiers up to swing the deal as servants, because we've been battling each other for all of these
That's
years.
too fair. Everything we've heard in the game in the series suggests that people would have to accept an offer of Griffith.
And once they open up the
And
castle
when
doors
you-
to accept my servants, I would then order my archers to begin firing down upon them in a sort of rather creepy barrage at night. It would create chaos at first, and then once my archers are done, and then timing it right, I would then order my men stationed on both sides of the castle to begin invading through the open door. That's how I would do it, without even needing the Band of the Hawk. The enemy
Sure. Okay, you heard his, you heard mine. Comment below what you think is
Prepares for
better.
battle as they are greeted by Uglyface at their front door. He says him and his men escaped and will now fight alongside them, but they don't realize that this is a Trojan horse. Meanwhile, Griffith's men charge down from the field and split his force into two, punching
So
through
you
the
just do
enemy's
what they
line.
did,
He uses his light cavalry's
with
mobility to
archers as
power
well?
through. The enemy orders his heavy cavalry to take them head on, while their archers deploy on both of their flanks, thinking soon he will have them cornered. The archers deploy their hellfire arrows and try to break
So really, the
Griffith's
best thing you can think of
formation,
is
and
basically
soon
what they
orders
did.
his men
Come on,
to
dude.
retreat. The enemy's commander thinks something is off, but their arrogant general then steps in and orders everyone to go chase after Griffith and his men. And they quickly corner Griffith's men near this river, and there they make their last stand to destroy the enemy as they advance. The smoke from the battlefield quickly blackens the air, and no one can see anything. And the enemy doesn't
that's
notice
black,
a
all right.
squadron of Griffith's soldiers approaching the castle walls, finally infiltrating the base. Griffith's
didn't they
men
close the
quickly begin
gates?
killing bad guys, and Casca and her crew unmask, and also begin killing the
Why
rest
did
of
you
the
take
bad
your helmet
guys,
off?
distracted.
It's a
Uglyface
helmet.
uses this opportunity to try and fight his way out, aggressively fighting against Casca and taking her down these steps. He distracts her and pins her against the wall, claiming to have just used his family's 1,000-year-old destruction.
Well, congratulations, Casca. You just got beaten by a guy wielding a spear and no depth perception.
Tactic. He talks too much. And thank you, Lord. Casca steals her sword and
There
quickly
we
kills
go.
this guy's BS family ancestry techniques. Oh, thank you, Casca. Back to the battlefield. Guts tries to take on the leader of the Purple Rhino Knights, and his men try to help him, but they get their bones and flesh ripped apart in an instant. The sky rains
I
with
love
their
this
blood.
gore.
This guy charges at Guts, but misses, and Guts attacks from the air, slamming his head into the sand floor. And that's when Commander suddenly realizes that his castle has been overrun by Griffith's men, and they are now surrounded. His men run away and leave him behind, and he gets swiftly killed by Griffith, signifying the end of
Congratulations,
the
Griffith.
100-year
You killed
war.
the old
Later,
man.
Griffith and crew return to the kingdom they serve and are greeted as gods among men. And that night, they get elevated all to knighthood by the king. And there he puts on a lavish ball.
Neat.
Arriving at the venue, Guts gets a little overwhelmed with all the love and affection, and he needs a breather, so he goes outside and he meets up with Casca. She says she'd be more comfortable with a sword, and Guts tells her that she looks good, and this comment was his biggest, best mistake. He tells Casca,
Let's be honest, he looks better. He is pulling off that jacket, and she needs to be pulling off that dress, and not in a sexy way. He doesn't look mad on her. I love the headpiece. The headpiece is fantastic. It doesn't suit her, though. I'd love to see her in some menswear.
that helping Griffith chase his dream of owning his own
But keep
kingdom
the
has
headphones.
inspired Guts to find his own dream, and that he truly is considering to leave the group to go find it.
So I do appreciate that in this as realistic a picture of history as Witcher is, Griffith is the one keeping his hair long and Casca's cutting her hair short, as opposed to every other anime you're going to see where we got all the badass sword wielding Fire Emblem hero ladies running out there with giant freaking curly hair.
Casca is stunned, but their conversation is cut short by the king, who makes a speech and tells everyone to basically get really drunk. Inside, Casca sees Griffith dancing with the princess and gets super bummed out because apparently she can't get over angel face Griffith. Anyways, but then
mean,
Guts
could you?
dances with
I mean, it's debatable if Guts can get over Griffith.
her, and they both forget about their deep conversation that they literally had, and later Guts drinks at the pub and talks to one of his buddies about what he and Casca spoke about, and his buddy suggests that he should bring Casca with him since they've been getting closer, wink wink. But Guts tells him that she is stuck on Griffith like Velcro covered in super glue, and his buddy tells him that she'll never have Griffith because Griffith has set his sight on achieving the best. And how is he gonna do that? By wooing the princess. And since it is now
I really feel like Griffith doesn't think these things through. Yeah, it's great that the princess loves you, but how is that actually going to translate into anything? Unless you're... Even if he went through with, say, getting her pregnant before she can get married to anyone, even engaged to anyone, and this is essentially killing off, like, the whole rest of her freaking bloodline, Kingdom's just going to turn on him.
peacetime, a general like him will never achieve much more in any kingdom unless he pulls something crazy off, like marrying the princess. And he reveals that the general who recently died was next in line for the throne, and his son was originally supposed to be a candidate for the princess's hand in marriage. This shocks
Oh, it's still a long shot. I mean, I was thinking, I'm like, okay, that being, this is a kingdom. Late game Crusader Kings 3, when I've got giant freaking empire that pretty much rules everything, then yeah, I marry off my princesses to mercenary leaders because those are the only way I can get extra units, extra computer controlled units in a war that I can call alliances on. This kingdom, though, they're going to want other kingdoms they can call on for alliances. The general's great. If the king had like a fourth daughter or something, he might. That's certainly a good way to do that. Not the first daughter.
Guts, and he wonders if there's more to Griffith than meets the eye. Later that
No,
night,
he's got a
word gets
freaking
out that
flesh
Guts has
pendant. I feel like you
decided to
should
leave
linger
the
on the
group,
flesh
and everybody
pendant
tries
more.
to convince him to stay. Casca begs him to stay.
Yeah,
but he's
she
even
is
stopped
definitely
by
looking
Griffith.
good
Griffith
in the
challenges
warm weather
Guts to a
outfit.
duel in exchange for his freedom to draw swords, and Griffith charges at him, thinking that the battle will be over, just like he did in the beginning, with Griffith winning and him continuing to serve Griffith's
Look at
dream.
that face.
That's when he realizes that the battle is over. For him, Griffith's sword was broken, and Guts has now won the duel and has won his freedom. Griffith drops to his knees in shock, and everybody is stunned, and Casca gets even more sad than she even realizes. One day later, Griffith sneaks into the princess's room, looking really defeated, and she, like an idiot, lets him in and asks if he's okay. Griffith ignores her words and quickly gets busy with her, and that's when one of the dirty maids sneaks a peek on the princess just to check on her, and she sees Griffith in bed with the princess. She runs away in shock, and the next day Griffith leaves the princess's room, but gets caught red-handed. Meanwhile, the king orders Griffith's men and Casca to head to this empty field for a training
Never see
practice
Gambison.
without any of their armor or weapons. And suddenly, they hear the terrifying, high-pitched roar of arrows raining down from the sky, and they realize that they've been
Dark.
set up. Dozens of men die in seconds, and Casca orders her men to think fast and charge directly towards the archers, barely making it out alive and escaping. Meanwhile, hound dog angel face Griffith is now being tortured, and he is told that he must be punished for getting nasty with the princess. And the king's men leave him in the hands of this short thing. This short hunchback of Notre Dame guy prepares to rip off the skin off of Griffith's flesh, and that's when he notices a strange-looking necklace. He jumps and rips it off, but then it stares at him and startles him, causing him to drop the necklace as it rolls down into the sewers. Months
Creepy.
later, Griffith lays destroyed in this dungeon, mentally and physically brutalized. And then he notices this necklace turned into this terrifying monster, and it crawls down. And he has a
Creepy.
vision of this unknown angel, all the while as his necklace floats away
Yeah,
down
sure,
this
angel.
river. Elsewhere, Casca and her group are now outlaws, and she gets word that after months
Okay, how did she run towards the enemy army and then get away from them?
of searching, they finally located where Griffith is being held.
Tomorrow's possibilities
Yeah,
are
commercials.
endless. A new
UC
career,
Berkeley.
a promotion. Prepare for tomorrow's opportunity.
Ugh, such a bad idea. Look, I get it. While he may be a powerful, fast-slatching medieval cowboy who has absolutely got a gorgeous face, his horny
Stupid
butt
beautiful
has
if he's not
literally
facing
ruined
directly at you.
everything. These guys are acting way too chill about it. They think that
Hey, listen, it's more than he's ruined. He got you guys. He got everybody in trouble when he. Actually, again, it's he was probably plotting that out. Maybe he wasn't paying attention. Maybe he successfully framed the enemies for that assassination. But still,
everything's going to turn back to normal? No! And on top of that, they're even more idiots. What are they doing? They're lighting way too many campfires. Look, all over the place. Campfires everywhere. What are they doing? They're making themselves visible as hell. Listen, the punishment for the lowest level of crimes during the Middle Ages was getting your head chopped off. And if we think about what Griff did, he did some
Not quite true,
crimes to
but
the king's daughter,
also
which
yes.
means that anybody associated with him would probably face the most horrifying punishment imaginable. Death by Rad Bracken. Oh, means death by breaking the wheel. This is what awaits us. This is what awaits them if they go save Griff.
oh, that's adorable that you think that. This is Berserk. The wheel is light compared to what some of these people do for fun.
Griffith based on the seriousness of his crimes. This is why I would maybe say something super unpopular at the moment and say, hey guys, maybe we should leave him be. It's presumable that being the Middle Ages means that during this time period, mercenaries are extremely common throughout the world, which means that we can always find somewhere else to find work, which means that they just leave the kingdom and they just bail on Griffith. Right now, they can find somewhere else where they don't have any history, where they'll be able to start fresh and not have any complicated allegiances. Bottom line, what do you want? Money. You need money to survive. And this means that somebody within the Band of the Hawk should convince everybody else as a group to ditch Griffith, go find somewhere else where they will get paid bank and not have the kingdom of that land try to chase them down and ruin their lives. But then out of nowhere, they hear terrifying screams outside of the tent, and her men begin getting slaughtered left and right. She runs out and yells for everybody to get ready for combat. These boomerangs nearly cut her head off. This
Seriously?
From the shadows and quickly overpowers Casca, and he demands that she calls off her men right now, or he'll cut off her head in 3 seconds. Resisting, the assassin gets ready to make her death swift.
I assume Guts shows up out of nowhere.
Off. My Guts! He's returned! He faces against this
got his
enemy,
classic look now.
Most of it anyway. But Guts uses his sword to create a freaking storm and breaks his weapons. With more manliness than an anime Chuck Norris, Guts forces the rest of the bad guys to retreat. The men here update Guts on what happened with Griffith, and he is shocked. The next morning, he goes to talk about it more with Casca, but she starts attacking him. She is furious with him and says that he ruined Griffith and the Band of the Hawks the moment
dude, Griffith was broken a long time ago.
Guts finally has a realization and lets Casca stab him. He feels guilty for what he's done and sees the sadness in her eyes, and she tries to go swimming with the fishes, but Guts catches her last minute. He calls her crazy, and she approaches him and says that he is always...
I'm sorry, when I see these guys by the water, all I can think about is that there's a gorgeous outtake in the original anime, the one that is on LCG, where Casca is confronting Griffith about the fact that he like slept with a male or noble to try to get up, which triggers her whole history with, of course she's been assaulted, and she's like, why did you do it? And the voice actor responds, I'm just a girl who can't say no, with a voice like that too. It's just so, these things, like, you can find this outtake on YouTube. This singing the whole thing, Griffith with his really serious face, the voice actor doing a really silly face, singing that song, and Casca doing
he's getting cut because of her. And she plants a big kiss right on him, and then they get busy medieval style. But then suddenly Guts has a terrifying vision of a monster. He tries to choke it, but the hallucination then ends, and he realizes that he is choking Casca. Oops. He apologizes and finally tells her his traumatic life story. It's very sad, blah 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 blah. Go watch the anime. He prepares to leave her, but
or barring that, check out the death battle between Guts and Nightmare. They do a pretty good coverage.
Hugs him. He tells her that there is no point in licking each other's wounds, but she tells him that she is not leaving, and they both lick.
You just choked
wounds.
me. She's had worse.
Later, Guts wakes up but senses something approaching him. He grabs his sword and hears a voice whisper out to him. This terrifying warrior approaches
here we
him
go.
from the mist and
This
warns
dude.
him of what's to come. Soon, he will go crazy with anger and will be forced to go through the hardest battle of his life. But whatever happens, he tells Guts
Freaking
to
awesome.
struggle, defy, and strive to live. And then the stranger disappears.
This guy actually fills an interesting and, in my opinion, both the exact right amount and still also kind of underutilized niche, which is the older version of the main, like, not literally, but like they went through something similar. Sometimes it's the older version of the same character, but usually it says that they went through something similar and they've allowed themselves to become even more obsessed with vengeance. You got this one. You've got Orsted in Mushoku Tensei. He's a good example. I know there's others. Ahab kind of counts with Ishmael, but like not really. I'm sure there's others. Okay, no. Jack Sparrow isn't really seeking out vengeance per se against. What's his face? It's just a perk.
without a trace. Later, Guts' team sneaks into this castle, and the princess from earlier, who apparently was really impressed with Guts the first time, helps guide them to Griffith's dungeon. Heading down this dark corridor, the princess informs them of what lays ahead at this bottom of this pit.
Okay, now we get to the real point where you start questioning how could they
terrifying
survive.
creature that ruled the world 1,000 years ago, but one man managed to stop it, named the Skull King. Defeating the evil, he created a great
where have we seen a
empire, but
Skull
got
King
too
before?
arrogant, and his army was eventually destroyed by the 5 angels sent by God. Casca thinks it was only 4 angels, but they don't think about too much of that detail. Reaching Griffith's cage, they open it, are horrified by what they see. Griffith, starved, skinned, somehow alive, and his tongue was cut out, and his tendons cut so he can't escape. Guts crumbles and hugs the shit out of his skinny, almost dead bro. And then the cage door closes. And then short Quasimodo excitedly announces that he's caught the Band of the Hawks. Guts, furious, bashes through the door, and he sends this guy to his doom. They then hear guards approaching them, and Casca tells them they need to run, but Guts loses his shit and sweeps through these men like a wave of death, using their
This is how you
corpses
barbarian.
as shields. He leads the way out, a one-man army. And
I want to point out that for anyone who's only seen this version and doesn't know anything about the original has this one gorgeous song they use again and again called Forces. Look it up. Oh my goodness. There's that. High forces.
The princess helps them escape. Rushing out of the castle with Griffith, they realize that they are being chased, and a rain of arrows comes crashing down in front of them. Guts and this guy quickly do their job and manage to escape the king's armies and make a clean getaway. Later that night, the Band of the Hawks cheer about having Griffith back, because everything's gonna be better now that he's back. They're idiots. Casca talks to this kid.
Everything's gonna be better now that we have a skinless mummy.
Telling her that he will never be able to walk or hold a sword
without a
again.
tongue.
Casca is shocked. She struggles to gather everyone and tell them the bad news. The crew is left speechless and begs Casca to lead them instead. But she tells them she needs time to think.
Oh, you mean Casca lead them, who has successfully organized their escape with their life and breaking into a castle and breaking out, versus Griffith, who nearly got them all killed? Yeah, I'd take Casca.
The men get desperate and beg Guts to form a new mercenary group instead.
My guts. You beat Guts and the cannon fodders. Team with Casca, you got a proper army. I get that she's hesitating, Reverie. But you came up with Guts. You're basically one of the meeples in a not Crusader Kings. That's the Crusader Dynasty Warriors game.
This is so sad, but this is also the perfect chance to drop Griffith like an empty, used-up chocolate wrapper. Let me explain. Right now, we've been put in a seriously good opportunity to make some lemonades out of some really nasty lemons. We can't let this go to waste. If I'm Guts, I'm going to take charge and lead the group with Casca as my boo, because leaders get lonely. Because think about it, Casca is a good warrior, but she doesn't have that Red Bull energy that we talk about that Guts has in huge supply. He's a one-man army. Because look.
Well, again, yeah, but Casca has actual tactics. So, you know, she leads the army. You're a mascot.
Griffith at this point finally lacks the sexy muscle bod that we got, which means that all those hours that we spent putting in the gym has finally paid off, and me taking over would increase our Band of the Hawks reputation to clientele, which we would easily be able to get more clients, because everybody knows about Guts. Full of adventure and fun, Guts agrees, but later...
Everyone knows about Guts. Every surrounding kingdom is going to want to hire the guys who just broke into and broke out of the royal city and castle after ending a 100-year war.
Finds out from Casca that she feels guilty about Griffith and can't leave him. Then Guts has the old switcheroo.
Then bring him with you. Ask for really big enough money for the next guy's over with to keep him in a aromatic herb bath forever.
But she tells him that he must go. Just then, inside Griffith's caravan, he then suddenly sees a shining light, and a kid approaches him. It's his younger self, and he tells older Griffith that he must go to his destiny. The caravan starts moving as Guts and Casca realize. Guts chases after him, and he sees Griffith crash and fall into the lake. Just then, the world has an eclipse. Guts runs to Griffith, but sees monsters beginning to appear all around him. Making contact with
How
Griffith,
to survive
the world around them suddenly changes
this.
to something horrible. Thousands of heads filled the floor around them. and everyone begins panicking. Guts picks up Griffith, and they hear from the monsters that the festival is about to commence, a feast that happens once every 216 years. And the monsters begin to
Kind of
hail the
arbitrary
incoming
number.
4 angels. One of the angels then rises from the ground. Archangel Slan. The world erupts around Guts and all his
Hey,
men, and more angels appear from the sky. The demons begin
Easier to
cheering
go if
as
you see
all the
that
men
first.
stare on in sheer horror. Griffith thinks that these beings are gods, but Guts knows that they're devils. The fallen angels welcome the humans to their sacred nocturnal festival and tell everyone that Griffith was selected by law of causality. And
Oh
means
no,
he
that thing! Don't make me look at that. Don't make me look at that head thing up
was
there.
meant to be
Ugh.
here, and they declare that he was selected to be the blessed
like a
king
Yu-Gi-Oh
of
ending.
longing. But Guts tells them to go screw themselves. They all laugh and tell him that Guts, you will make the
And
perfect
that guy.
sacrifice. And everyone finds out that the angels around them will sacrifice all of them in order to make Griffith a demon king. He was qualified to become one the moment he obtained the Crimson Egg, revealing to everyone that receiving the Egg of the King is how they are reborn as God Hand Guardian Angels. The demons around them begin licking
Cool.
their lips.
Again, like, if memory serves, these guys even look better in the original artwork. These guys here look generic as heck.
And the angels announce that Griffith must choose to become a demon king himself. And Gus doesn't think that Griffith is evil enough to do it. And that was his biggest mistake. The invocation of doom begins, and they bring Griffith to the altar.
So what's he gonna recommend here? Just immediately snap Griffith's neck?
Shooting up from the ground beneath their feet, Guts hangs on to dear life, but Griffith lets go of his hand, forcing Guts to use his weapon to cling onto the wall himself. Meanwhile, Griffith, now laying in front of these demon gods, they tell him that he must learn about him.
Oh, look at that guy. See, here you start seeing the elements of what made the actual original artwork amazing.
Himself
Yeah.
first, and they show him a vision of his kid self, realizing that his dream of obtaining his own kingdom is on top of millions of dead people. And he starts crying because he soon realizes that he must obtain his dream, and that he must be okay with the murder of millions. Because what is a man without power? And then he suddenly comes back to reality, and the angels tell Griffith that he just saw the truth within his own consciousness. They tell him that all of his men are what is left for his final journey, and the angels offer up their powers and tell Griffith to say the words, "I sacrifice," in order to receive them. And just then Guts climbs back up and calls out to Griffith. He looks at Guts approaching and tells him that he was the only one who ever made him forget about his dreams. And
Which is another great line. Like, for a guy who can sing, I just really can't say no with a funny voice. The way he hits that line in the original anime, just gorgeous. Out of a thousand battles and hundreds of enemies, only you have stood in the way of my vision.
and he thanks him, and he utters the words of the devil. Suddenly a wall closes around in front of Griffith and cuts off Guts. The sky then crashes down upon everyone, and all humans get branded for sacrifice. And then terrifying creatures begin showing up left and right even more,
Well,
and begin
I mean,
attacking Guts' men, quickly
terrifying
slaughtering
as they
them,
can be
becoming
with the
food for
CGI.
Griffith, the new child of darkness. Casca looks on in shock as this guy saves her and tells her to run, and then she gets saved by Blonde Guy.
I thought I was saving the blonde guy, actually. Really regret keeping my eyes closed, but at the same time, I don't think I want to see this. Unless I'm facing Slan, whatever.
He tells her that she is now their leader and that the Band of the Hawk will survive
Oh,
with her.
woo,
but he quickly
yay.
gets injured and dies in Casca's arms. And she sees more demons
Leader of all,
approaching her.
no
Meanwhile,
one.
On the outside of this dark portal, one of the Band of the Hawk members, this kid, finally arrives, but sees something strange in the distance and sees a warrior battle. But meanwhile, back
Oh,
inside,
hey,
Guts
it's,
tries to reach
Nosferatu.
Griffith, but the angels above him tell him that Griffith doesn't want to be reduced. And more demons try to stop Guts, but he brutally murders any that approach him. And he finally gets knocked down this ledge and lands in a river of corpses and blood, and he sees one of his friends in the distance and runs to him. And just then he gets ripped in half by this smiling demon, eating him right in front
That
of
one
Guts,
still looks
and he gets
awesome.
surrounded by more hungry demons, and then Griffith gets granted wings and turns into the fifth angel. Guts rushes to see Griffith and tries to call out to him, but that's when Griffith reveals Casca. Guts is horrified and tries to go after her, but he gets one of his arms trapped in the monster's
And memory
mouth.
serves.
Guts is then forced to see and hear things that he wished he had never seen before. Unable to do anything, he begins
Oh, come on. It's this setting. Don't tell me you've never seen some non-consensual cuddling before.
to lose his mind and starts chopping off his trapped arm and breaks it off from the bone. and he charges towards Griffith, but is stopped by his powers. But even then, Guts almost overpowers Griffith, shocking the angels, but then he gets sent up flying into the air and slams onto the floor. A demon then quickly holds him down. Casca, barely alive, tells him to not look, and the angels from above...
Or better
adore
yet, don't watch the movie, watch the original
the love
anime.
between Guts and
It's
Casca.
only
And then Guts gets
irritatingly
one of his eyes stabbed,
expensive.
with Griffith's cold stare being the last thing he sees. But then the eclipse
Yeah, talking about going from Pretty Boy to Frieza.
breaks, and down comes the one man who can stop this, the Skull King. He tries to attack one of the angels, but misses. But he carries on and comes charging down, killing all the demons that he encounters. Griffith tries to kill him, but he is too quick and disappears from where he came from. He exits the portal, showing up to the kid from earlier, but this time carrying Guts and Casca in tow. The angels then announce that since the fifth angel has arrived, an epic of darkness shall soon arrive. That man will soon live in a world known as the Age of Darkness. Days later, Guts wakes up in a cave, missing an eye and an arm. The kid from earlier arrive and tells him that they've been taking care of them. He asks him what happened to all the rest of the men, but then Guts remembers Casca, and he rushes over to see her, but realizes something is off. As he approaches her, she flinches and looks scared. He tries to calm her down, but she runs away to hide behind this little girl. The boy tells him that she has no memory of anything and is gone insane. Guts begins to cry in horror and escapes into the forest, running for hours until he collapses, defeated in this field. And then suddenly he hears some noise and senses demons approaching him, wanting his branded flesh. The Skull King
Okay,
then
so you're just
arrives and reminds
summarizing
him
at
of what
this
he's
point.
told
You have
to
no idea how
stay
you'd actually
alive.
survive any
No
of that,
matter
huh?
what, Guts has been marked for sacrifice, so demons will never stop hunting him. And then Guts remembers what Griffith did, and his rage
And Griffith is like, well, you've been marked now, so you are going to be forced to grind for
motivates him to
XP.
continue
This
fighting,
can't possibly
to save the
backfire.
world, mostly for revenge though. And he grabs one of the Skull King's weapons and picks off the remaining ghosts. He goes full on crazy and plans to send all of God's angels back to hell with one arm. And he finally realizes his own dream, which is to stop the demons, to save the world, to kill Griffith, and restore Casca. But what do you think about the...
You know, he does what I consider the most important of those before the artist passed away, and that is restoring Casca's sanity. I think everything else was just like 20 years of Monster of the Week stuff or something. I don't know why it took him 20 years. Honestly, I've seen plot synopses. I'm like, there's no reason for it to have taken that long to have gone from point A to point B to point C, where they healed Casca. I don't get that at all. And he makes some more friends along the way, all of whom are attractive. But yeah, it's like there's a reason this is the golden age. Okay, like it. Having seen the anime, which is the sequel to those movies, which takes place afterwards, and just seeing how different it is it's actually kind of jarring, even with the CGI art. So, thank you for nothing, dude. I was expecting some, always carry a holy swords, whatever, on you, snap Griffith's neck immediately when the angels start talking about ascending him, have a big holy water bomb or something to get out. But no, you just go full summarize the movie mode, which I'd be more upset with if it was a good movie. But it is a good anime. It's just harder than it should be to get a hold of. So that was that. I'm a little disappointed, but honestly, it was what I was expecting.